Wait till he starts the left one. He doesn't know which one it's supposed to be.
Low income, late start. What are you to do?
Brian, I am so excited to talk about this because people ask us all the time, hey, based on where I am today, I think I may be behind, or I don't know, maybe I've made a mistake that is insurmountable. I want you guys to speak into it. And we love that we get to speak into that kind of stuff. We love that we get to answer the things that you care about. We love it so much that every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central, we do a live stream where we want to answer your questions and load you up so that you can do money better. So with that, right now, we have the team out in the wings collecting your questions so that we can load you up. So with that, senior content developer Megan, I'm going to send it over to you.
Did you write that down on a sticky?
I just pulled it out. Thought about it all week.
I was sitting here thinking, there's no way he's going to stick this.
Thought about it all week.
5th time's the charm, Bo. All right, we're starting.
Sick burn.
Dropping bombs over there.
All right, cool. Cool.
All right, we're starting off with a question from MH. They say, is there a good way to know how much to contribute if you are behind? I'm 32 years old with about $40,000 invested. I make $50,000 per year in gross annual income. I'm currently saving 25% between my 401k and HSA, including the match. I'm just honestly not sure how much more I could contribute realistically, but I like to have goals to work towards.
Well, MH, first of all, okay, so let me restate what I just heard. You're 32 years old. You've already accumulated $40,000 and you're saving 25% of your gross income already. So like when I read that, I'm thinking to myself, like, where are you behind? Like, are you even certain that you're behind? Or how did you even arrive at the conclusion you're behind? Because we have a great tool. If you go to moneyguide.com/resources, we have a wealth multiplier tool. And what it will show you is how much each dollar that you put to work can turn into by the time that you get to retirement. What I think is amazing is for a 32-year-old, if you go look at what your wealth multiplier is, Brian, do you have a thing? Do you know what the wealth multiplier is? Oh gosh, he's got a cycle through.
Gosh, it's somewhere around here. It's somewhere. Yeah.
All right, so for a 32-year-old, Brian, what is the wealth multiplier?
32-year-old, it is 18.05.
So if you just were to take that $40,000 that you have today and multiply that times 18.05, that would tell you what you're on track to have without saving another dime. And I bet that's going to be a pretty big number. So I'm curious, are you actually behind? But MH's question was, okay, if I am behind, if I do arrive at that conclusion, what are some ways that I should catch up? Or how do I think about catching up? What would you say?
Well, first, I think when in doubt, zoom out. I talk about that for market volatility, but I also think it would be helpful in this situation for context. We just know, look, we aspirationally focus a lot of our content on trying to help 20, 30-somethings, and even 40-somethings because of that whole component of compounding growth. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that if you do the research, the average age Americans begin investing is 33 years of age. Mm-hmm. So
already ahead of the curve.
By that context, MH is actually ahead of the curve. When we talk about the 20-somethings, that's why we always talk about that 25% is aspirational in your 20s. We know that it takes a while to catch your footing, to get inspired, to even make this happen. I also want to give MH some additional context. I don't like to do public math, but I did bring a crutch of my public calculator here. And I was going to type this in. So he makes $55,000. 25% works out to be about $13,750 a year. That's pretty aggressive, but he is counting his employer match. So I think a lot of people, if you have a very generous employer, this is actually very doable. Sure. So if we divide that by 12, we can come up with, that's a little over $1,100 a month of investments. He says he has $40,000 already in his investment accounts. And I'm just going to use a conservative 8% ongoing, and we'll just say take him to 60. We're not even. I don't know if that's fire. That's not probably too aggressively fire. But it's earlier than 65. It's earlier than 67.
You're right.
So if you do 27 years times 12 months, that's 324 months. That puts him at, check this out, $1.6 million, $1,652,000 when he crosses into his 60s. I don't think you're really behind MH. I think it's just you need to reframe your perspective. Instead of being glass half empty, let's be glass half full.
I love it.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much,
like that
MH,
visual
for your
aid there?
question.
That was great.
That was perfect.
It's so good.
I mean, how many more props can I put in a question?
honestly,
I mean, we got calculators,
do you
we
see
got
it?
deliverables, we got cups.
Look at your
I
desk.
feel like Carrot Top. I've used that joke before.
I often think of you as Carrot Top in my mind. Great.
Bigger Carrot Top, though, right? When
No,
he was
no,
kind
no.
of like...
No, that's oh you're talking about he is bigger Carrot. Yes, yeah. He's.
Yeah, there's
Did you know
different
Carrot
phases.
Top got super jacked? Is a thing.
I'm not
He's-
following any of this.
Did y'all know
honest.
that I actually saw Carrot Top at live?
No, you did not.
At UGA.
Did you really?
He came to UGA and did a whole stand-up comedy routine. That's how I was
that was
introduced
back
to
in the day. This is before he like hit
That
mainstream.
shows that
Yeah.
Carrot Top is my age. Maybe a little older since I was the
Since you were a student and
and
he
he
was
was
the
actually the performer.
That's hilarious.
That's a.
Do you even know who Carrot Top is? Is it?
I don't.
I was like, she has no idea. She has no context for this. He's a comedian.
If you go to Vegas, you can probably still see him.
He was a comedian. Is a comedian, and then he got super jacked. Like he got super big and started lifting weights, and he got super swole.
I loved his stuff. A lot of people I felt like sometimes were hard on Carrot Top, but I actually liked his prop comedy.
We'll have to add, we have a resident comedian here on the Money Guy team. We'll have to ask him in show meeting what his thoughts on Carrot Top were. I'd be curious to know. Looks like it's thumbs up.
All right. Thank you, MH, for your question. If you would like a Money Guy tumbler, you can email winner@moneyguy.com. Y'all ready for the next one?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. This next question is from the Mr. Broxley. Says, my employer contributes 10% to an ESOP each year while also letting me contribute 8% to my 401k with a 50%, so 4% total match. I also work in an intense career at a CPA firm, Brian would know. How can I justify leaving this role with a 14% employer retirement contribution?
It's hard. It's really, really hard. So for those of you who do not know, an ESOP is an employee stock ownership plan where basically you get to become an owner in the company for which you work. So it's a little bit different than like a profit sharing contribution. You're actually receiving an employer contribution, in this case, 10% into ownership of the company. So as the company grows, as the company becomes more profitable, you get to benefit from that at some later date when you cash in your ESOP shares. Well, in addition to that, Mr. Broxley puts in 8% of his pay and his employer puts another 4% as a matching contribution. So there is indeed a 14% employer dollar figure going in, and some of it's going into a liquid 401k account that can be invested and some of it's going into ownership of the company. Mr. Broxley, it certainly sounds like your company is trying to implement a plan where they want to incentivize people to be here and stay here long term and have an ownership stake. I would argue this is a very good example of some golden handcuffs. And so I think the question he's ultimately asking is, Brian, when we are measuring our current existence, the current life that we're living, the current job that we have, and we're measuring that against other options, other alternatives, how do we decide? Is it actually worth leaving? Is the grass actually greener on the other side? Or are the situations sometimes too good that you can't even walk away from it?
Yeah. By the way, when you first gave this question, Megan, I thought you said Mr. Broccoli.
We call him Mr. Broccoli.
But I'm so glad we had the name actually up on the screen because for a few seconds it took me. I had to recalibrate the brain because all I could think about was broccoli. And then, okay, back in.
So you heard the question, right?
I did hear the question. I mean, I will say 14% employer contribution is strong.
With some of it going in ESOP.
So that's why I would definitely, this is a measure twice, cut once type component because employers do this. You see it. We've seen it like Mayo Clinic doctors, all kind of people who will load you up because they want you to stay, invested in their organization. And that's pretty noble. But you have to ask yourself, where am I going? Am I happy? Am I fulfilled? Am I living my best life? And even with a generous compensation structure, I would say if you're having doubts on that, maybe you want to create another plan, but that doesn't mean you execute the plan. It means you have to do the steps for it. So always, you first have to kind of take inventory of yourself. How marketable are you? How successful will you be if you go out on your own? He's already kind of given us some indicator. He's got a background in public accounting.
Sounds pretty marketable, right?
I'm going to come and give some specific thoughts on public accounting after I give the general stuff for everybody else, and then we'll nerd out for the accountants out there. And then I think you just got to know where you're going. This is the 3D glasses, where you're talking about creating your own plan for the future. A lot of people think that when I say put on your 3D glasses, meaning you have a do-do plan for how horrible can it possibly be. There's the down-to-earth, the reasonable plan, and then, of course, there's the dream plan. That's not just for starting a business. It's not for anything that's that exotic. It can be just for changing jobs or changing careers or any of the above, because it's basically putting you in the mindset of looking at all the scenarios so you're not surprised and you can actually attack it. Now, here's the specialized advice for the CPAs. And don't send me hate mail if you work for a large CPA firm. I have a lot of, I graduated with an accounting degree, worked in public accounting. I have relatives, because I try to convince everybody to become a public accountant because I think it is great training. But anybody who goes into public accounting, you're going to have a dilemma, career dilemma, somewhere between years 4 and 6, is you either stay in public accounting or you probably need to kind of exit and go into consulting or do something else. I know quite a number of people that have stayed in, and it's a great career. There is nothing wrong with it, but there is a lot of times with public accounting, it's the issue of you only get paid when you're doing hourly work. And that sometimes can be hard. All my friends that stayed in public accounting and run large firms now, they just get burned out. They're tired. They make great incomes. They live a great life. But it's just sometimes they don't want to be on, and it's so much so with how they get paid and so forth. So it's stressful. So it's not a negative towards accounting, but I think that fortunately this skill set is very marketable. Because if you think about what is the language of business, it is the financial statements. It's the income statements, it's the balance sheets, it's the cash flow statements, and guess who knows how to speak that fluently? It's the public accountant. There's a reason why so many CPAs run companies. There's so many reasons that you see public accountants that run real estate empires. It's because when you get really nerdy with the math, you have the foundation to be really successful in life. And that's why I try to encourage everybody who, I find out you have an aptitude towards math and you have an aptitude towards business. I usually try to talk people into it. And this is the same advice I'd give my niece, who's working for a big 6 firm right now, but or big 4.
Big 4, I think.
Big 4. Now. Yeah, I'm old. So it's one of those things. So I just gave you the exact same advice that I would give my niece.
And I think if you're thinking through, like, okay, how do I justify leaving? There are financial things that you have to think about, and there are non-financial. Obviously, you talked about some of the non-financial stuff. Like, do you have a long commute? Do you not enjoy the people you work with? Do you not enjoy the people that you're working for? Those are all things that you have to factor in. But there are realistic financial aspects where sometimes it does make sense to stick it out in a less than ideal situation so that either you can get to the part of your career where you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor, or to position yourself to be able to move somewhere else. We've seen people do this before where, oh man, I'm in an industry and I just don't like this. I don't enjoy it, don't want to do the work, don't want to be part of this. And they make a career shift, and that made all the sense in the world. And then we see people who just say, man, I'm impatient, I don't want to wait, and they end up leaving an amazing opportunity simply because they were impatient, or simply because the early stages got difficult. So in your circumstance, you have to assess which one of those is true. Should I continue to maybe do this, maybe continue to save up, build up, begin with the end in mind, to position myself to be able to make a career transition 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road? Or is now the best time to do that? And it's a weighing of both the financial pieces as well as the non-financial pieces.
Wonderful.
How much am I getting beat up in the comments by any public accountants?
No.
Any hate? Anybody? Or did anybody agree? Or does nobody care? Because we don't have a. They're all working on tax planning right now.
I'm about to say none of the public. This is almost tax season.
They're all
so
doing
none of our
compliance work right
accountants
now
are
as we speak.
actually in the chat right now.
Maybe we'll see it later in the comments. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Broxley, for your question. Hopefully that gives you a lot to think about. If
I
you
heard
would
it
like
again. Broccoli.
Mr.
Broxley.
Broccoli. By the way, it's not, you didn't say anything wrong. My ears hear what they want to hear.
It's because you were talking about carrots before.
Carrot,
Maybe
Tom.
I'm just
Oh,
hungry.
can we have a vegetable in every question so far? Let's see. That'd be a fun game for me to play.
Mr. Broxley, if you would like a tumbler for asking a question, you can email winner@moneyguy.com.
I did have broccoli last night.
Funny enough, you won't believe this. So did I. My wife made this new dish I'd never had. She'd never done before. She crushed it. If you're listening, honey, you crushed it.
My wife went out with some neighbors last night, so it was me and Emery. So we went to Cheddar's.
Oh,
I mean, that's a flash from
No,
Georgia.
buddy, that is a
because we
flashback.
never go to that place up
Holy
here.
cow.
And I got me a ribeye because it was very affordable. Like my wife went to a steak restaurant last night, and we compared and contrasted, and I think she paid 3 times what
Very different
what
experiences.
my ribeye cost.
That's hilarious. Oh, Megan, you're still here? Okay, yeah. What are you doing?
This next question is from Soul Fu. He says, how does a future pension affect the Roth versus traditional calculation? The pension essentially puts me in a higher tax bracket at retirement.
Man, that's a great question, and not one that people often think about, because the general line of thinking is that, okay, right now, if you're in a higher income situation, you may want to take advantage of pre-tax contributions, build up pre-tax assets, because there's a good chance later in life you'll have the ability to convert some of those assets to Roth at lower tax brackets. And then even as you get into like required minimum distributions and that sort of thing, if you need to pull off of your Roth assets to supplement lifestyle, you can do that and control your tax situation. But Soul Food brings up a great question here. What if I'm going to have a pension? And what if when I exit the workforce at 55, 60, 65, I'm going to have some sort of guaranteed income stream coming in? Well, that idea of me being able to convert assets later on in lower tax brackets may not be there. What if I'm someone, we have people in the chat all the time that say this, hey, you think that when you retire, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket, but my experience is when I retire, because I did such a good job saving, I'm still in higher tax brackets. So there are people who do have that reality. So when that's the case, when that's the scenario, Brian, should you rethink how you do Roth versus traditional, or are current day tax savings still super, super valuable and you take advantage of it while you can because that's what makes the most sense in the present time?
Well, I love this because this is actually a great kind of thought exercise. When I talk about do a personal financial triage on exactly where you are with your finances, we all know that finance is going to be personal, hence personal finance. And for somebody who does have a pension, a lot of times when you have a job that offers you a very lucrative pension, your current income might be lower than if you were in a job that just offered the traditional defined contribution, not the defined benefit, because that's always the trade-off, is because the defined contribution, like your 401ks, your employer is going to give you a match and then you have to fund it. But with a pension, that's a defined benefit. They usually, because there's a premium on that, you might have a little bit lower income. So it goes through the exact same, filter of if your income is lower now than it's going to be in the future, then obviously a Roth is outstanding, because a Roth, if you think about why do we love Roth? You don't get a current tax deduction. You get tax-free growth, though. That's the opportunity that you get with Roth contributions. So it makes complete sense. Somebody who has lower income now because they're in a very generous employer plan with a pension or something like that, but they're going to have much higher income in retirement because not only are they going to have their retirement savings, but they're going to have this pension, they're going to have Social Security, you're going to start stacking up all these things. And so you're going to be a higher tax bracket. By all means, you're never going to get the Roth conversion opportunity that you see a lot of people. However, there's a lot of people, high incomes now, you're in a defined contribution plan, and you do think you're going to be part of maybe the FIRE movement or FINE movement, and you're going to leave the workforce at 55. You're not going to start making required minimum distributions until your mid-70s. There is going to be a drop-off of your earned income. You're not going to have any other cash flow. You're going to have a 3-bucket strategy that's completely diversified, so you're going to be able to legally manipulate how your taxes work. By that situation, if you're in a high tax bracket right now, but in a much lower in retirement, we want to go ahead and take advantage of traditional, because the tax deduction now is much more valuable than it will be in the future when you likely can manipulate those tax rates easily. So Soul Food, I think that you're thinking about this right, and the fact that, yeah, if your pension is going to drive your taxes up in retirement, but maybe you're in a lower tax rate right now, and you also have decades of tax-free growth, all those things are checks into the positive for why Roth contributions are so valuable right now.
The only other thing I throw in there is, let's assume that you've projected this out and you think that you'll always be in the same tax bracket. Maybe you're in this working tax bracket, and then when you retire, you're going to be in the same tax bracket. Okay, well, if there's not that arbitrage, which way do I lean? I still think Roth makes a lot of sense, because not only can Roth dollars grow tax-free for your entire life without being subject to required minimum distributions at age 73 or age 75, they can also grow tax-free for the first 10 years of your beneficiary's life. So it is a long timeline where if you can justify Roth and you're not walking away from a substantial tax benefit today to do so, I think Roth is great.
One final just word of caution, though. Pensions, I know a lot of employers, you don't see as many pensions. A lot of governments have pensions. And even governments that have pensions, because they were so underfunded for so long, they've changed the vesting for a lot of pensions from like 5 years to now a lot of them have gone to where they might take 10 years to qualify. So just pay attention to what the vesting is on your plan, because you don't really have anything until you know you've locked in some of those benefits. So read the fine print too.
Wonderful. Soul Food, thank you so much for your question. If you would like a tumbler for asking one, you can email winner@moneyguy.com. Brian, you did get some support in the chat for your public accounting comments. So.
Oh, look at that. Birds of a feather.
Well, it all depends on what your perspective is.
Mm-hmm.
The chat also says that they definitely prefer broccoli over carrots.
Of course. Who would?
I kind of like them both.
I mean, yeah, but if you had to choose one or the other, you're definitely going
Well,
broccoli.
I will give it this. Broccoli, I don't have to dip into ranch. I'm typically putting some carrots or, well, think about it. When you eat wings.
Have you ever dipped broccoli in ranch? It's pretty fantastic also.
But I don't. I mean, I always just have steamed broccoli, like with a steak or something like that. Whereas carrots, the typical time I eat carrots is when you're eating hot wings and they're right next to the celery.
There's a place. This is a shameless plug, so if they're watching, they're gonna get. This is free promotion for you. There's a little meat and three place here called Bishop's. Remember we used to eat there all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And they'd always have this carrot souffle. You know what I'm talking about?
I think it was more sugar.
And
than
it was
carrot.
literally my kids.
I think you like the sugar in it.
Think that they love carrots because of that carrot souffle, and it literally just tastes like dessert because they put marshmallows on top. Have you had this?
I haven't, but that sounds
Oh,
great.
it's so fantastic.
Well, I mean, the first time I had it, and it's because it's really a vector to get the sugar into your body, because like Thanksgiving for years I love sweet potato souffle. So you think you love sweet potatoes? No,
you don't still.
I do. But it's really the melted marshmallows. It's the sugar that's poured in. So when we ate this carrot souffle, I thought it was sweet potato souffle first time, and it was only until like the third time I ate it they were like, no, this is
carrots.
I'm like, oh, so it's the sugar is what I really like.
Yeah, hot take, because we had to decide this at Christmas this year. When it comes to sweet potato souffle, I don't prefer the marshmallows on top. I prefer
like the pecans?
Pecans.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm not a big marshmallow person.
Right. I'll have a marshmallow s'more, but I don't want it on my vegetables.
Yeah.
That's the way that I feel. General
Can
consensus.
you do both? Why do these things have to be an either or?
See, that's Brian Preston.
Why can't we do both? Because I love them all. I mean, let's throw it on there. Let's put some pecans. Let's throw some marshmallows. Let's see what happens. There must be some chemical reaction that occurs, because I'm not the first one to come up with that idea. I'm sure. You do both.
Nate does both. Look at that.
Nate.
We'll have to
Thanksgiving
try
at
it.
Nate's
Rebel.
house. I love it.
You're over 27 though, right? Okay, we're all right. A little internal humor.
All right. This next question is from Snowcross Fan. He says, I'm 45 and I have $44,000 in student loan debt and only $10,000 in retirement. Should I keep investing, prolonging out the student loan payments, or should I keep hitting them with all of my cash if they will be done in 18 months? So how do you decide, student loans or retirement savings?
Well, so this is a difficult question. So every financial decision that we make has an opportunity cost associated with it. If I decide to buy X, that means that there's a plethora of other things I'm not buying. If I decide to spend X dollars, I'm making the decision to not save X dollars. Or if I'm going to make the decision between satisfying student loan debt, I'm going to go pay off this student loan debt, which means I'm going to decrease my debt balance. I'm going to save money and interest, or I'm going to go fund some other goal that I have, like funding retirement or saving for the future, whatever. At 45 years old, you have to really think through, okay, what are my goals and what does the end of my plan look like? Am I building towards financial independence, and is that a top goal that I have, or am I aiming to be debt-free so that I can free up cash flow? And how would I prioritize those two goals? And depending on how you prioritize those goals, as well as factoring in the external factors like the interest rate on your student loan debt and the assumed rate of return you might have on your retirement assets, you need to make a determination. Which one of these goals am I willing to and desire to pursue the most? And you have to make that judgment call, because at 45 with $10,000 saved up for retirement, I would argue you're a little bit behind. But also, having $44,000 of student loan debt, I would argue that it's hung around longer than we would prefer to hang around. So you've got to make some assumptions in your financial life to determine where will my dollars best be utilized to pursue the goal that is the most important to me.
So this question is, here's an easy way to put your mind in the way to find the solution. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. A little PEMDAS love.
Little PEMDAS.
If you think about it, if you were doing a math problem, you're trying to figure out, is it the parentheses? Is it the multiplication, the division, the addition? What comes first? And that's exactly what Snowcross is dealing with right now. The good news is we've created the all-terrain system that, just like it works in math, there is a financial system, and it's called the Financial Order of Operations. If you go to moneyguy.com/resources, you can download this if you really want to go deep. Of course, my New York Times best-selling book, Millionaire Mission, will kind of give you the origin story for all this. But here's the way Bo kind of gave you the things, because there's variables that are going to determine what you need to do first. I don't love the fact that you're in your mid-40s with this much debt sitting out there. And that's why, fortunately, when we get into the chapter on high-interest debt, step 3 of the Financial Order of Operations, we actually give you the details on what is high-interest debt when it comes to student loans, based upon it and how that's influenced by age. So you can then figure out, is this something that needs to be part of step 3, or is this something I can defer down to step 9 of the Financial Order of Operations? So then you can get to work, after the emergency reserves of step 4 into step 5 and get the Roth and so forth. But you just got a lot of variables that you're going to have to kind of figure out how you do that triage moment where you figure out where you are, what's going to be the best use for the next dollar that's in your army of dollar bills, and then get to work and get serious. Look, at 40, because he's 45 with $44,000 of student loan debt. These are things that you're fortunate that the guy talking to you, I'm older than that. So you're still young in my eyes, but we got to get to work, and you got to be deliberate, and don't let another day pass you by without attacking this.
Love it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Snowcross fan, for your question. If you would like a Money Guy tumbler, you can email winner@moneyguy.com. All right, this next one is from Chris D. Chris D.
Before you jump in this, yeah. I can't help it. I get slacks come across my. Do you realize how many breakers are being tripped in the building because of all the?
It's because it's freezing in Nashville right now. It's
y'all know how cold it is in Nashville right now? I told my wife that this isn't healthy. I even ran upstairs, and I know all my plumbing's on interior walls, but still.
Did you go drip?
I went upstairs. I went upstairs this morning just to run, because I woke up and it was like 12 or whatever it was, and then yesterday it was like 8, and I was like, I haven't checked all my lines upstairs.
You went and dripped your pipes, didn't you?
I didn't drip them, but I went and turned them on, make sure that they were all working. But I don't know, in my skin, cold. I don't know if y'all can see it. You're like, is Brian human or reptile? Human or reptile? It's right now it's pretty questionable.
Well, here's the thing. So it is like we have like single digit or low teen temperatures here in Tennessee. It's pretty unusual for us here in the suburb of Nashville.
Did you know it's snowing in Jacksonville, Florida today, supposedly?
Was it really? I did not know that. And so, and also, so those of you who have not come to do a studio tour, by the way, if you ever come to town, we'd love for you to do a studio tour. If you've not seen, this is a old building. It's like over 100 years old, and so it's drafty-ish and stuff. And so it gets cold in here. So we don't want our people to be cold. We want our people to be very comfortable when they're at work. We want them to have a pleasant, wonderful, happy working environment. So we got tons of space heaters. But when all the space heaters go at once and start pulling off of this, 100-year-old electricity, it trips the breakers. So it's a thing. It's happening. I don't know what else to tell. But when my wife and I first got married, I was so tight that, have I told you the story before? When we first got married, I was so tight, I would not turn on the heat. I would not turn on the heat in our house until like February or March. So literally every night I'd be like, babe, I'm so sorry. Put on your wool socks, put on your sweatpants, throw on your hoodie, and that's how we're gonna live. And she stayed with me.
We are from Georgia. This is all throwback to the late Jimmy Carter presidential, where that's what he used to tell you is, keep your thermostat low and put on an extra layer.
That's what I did.
No, I can't handle it if it's below 70.
Yeah, no, not anymore. Yeah,
70. You run your heat up over 70?
Every single day.
Goodness gracious.
Every single day.
You do too?
I put it down to 67 to sleep at night. Oh. What do you keep your house at? 55?
I sleep at 62.
62? I'm just shivering. I'm cold thinking about it.
I'm always cold though, so.
If it was up to me, we would not have this many space heaters. I don't think they're very efficient.
Fortunately, you've lost control of this thing.
No, believe me, I know. Now I'm just hoping we don't burn the building down. It's small victories.
I'm sorry, who asked the question?
I'm so sorry. I couldn't help but notice that all these, because by the way, I walk in this morning, half the lights are off in my side of the office. And then I know it's show day, and I see Carter. And I'm like, where's Bo? He's not in his office. And he's like, oh, him and Marcy are flipping breakers. So I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, I'm starting a meeting. And I was like, well, if you weren't running 2 space heaters, but then I found out it wasn't just his space heaters. You were running space. Y'all are all in the same circuit.
Yeah, all of us.
Yeah, because your offices are
they're
much
so
colder.
cold.
Yeah.
Those windows are freezing, but they're beautiful and cold. Thanks for coming to our TED Talk. Hey, financial question?
All right, this was from Chris D. And he says, how do I decide how much life insurance I need? My wife and I have no kids and both make about $60K a year.
Awesome. So, so what is the ultimate goal of life insurance? This is a pretty good thing to level set. The general goal of life insurance is that if someone were to be disadvantaged by your passing, not just emotionally, but financially, someone depends on you for their well-being, we would argue that there is an insurable interest on your life. So commonly, if you have someone and you bought a house together and you have a mortgage, or maybe you have kids, or you have a spouse that stays at home, or you're a higher earning spouse for a lower earning spouse, those are all things that would substantiate there's an insurable interest on your life. Meaning, if something were to happen to you, you'd want to be able to replace your income and fund other financial goals. Well, then the question comes back to, okay, well, how much should I have? I'll give the easy rule of thumb, Brian, and then why don't you talk through how, if you want to go deeper in the rule of thumb, you can kind of think through that. But generally speaking, a really nice rule of thumb, if you want to think about how much life insurance, especially for young people to start with, is about 10 times your annual income. So if you were to have an income of $60,000, we would say that, okay, maybe a $600,000 life insurance policy would make sense. Or you could even round that up to $750,000 or even round it up to $1 million, because at young ages, for healthy individuals, life insurance is incredibly affordable. It's not something that has to be a super expensive undertaking. So that's kind of the general loose rule of thumb, 10 times your annual income. But what about for this couple, Brian, who doesn't have any kids, or maybe for someone who does have other extenuating circumstances like mortgage and kids? How would you go about deciding an appropriate insurance amount?
Well, I mean, you kind of gave a lot of the breadcrumbs there. Is that you need to think about who's counting on this money, what income is being replaced. So for a couple who don't have kids, you said it, debt. And then I'd also be thinking about the component of time. If your significant other passes away, I mean, that is going to shock us all to the core. And there's probably going to be a period of time that you're just not going to be able to work. Mm-hmm. I mean, that you might need to have at least some flexibility to pay your debts, pay, living expenses, and so you can get back up on your feet. So that's why it's not going to be a ton. I mean, that's term insurance is our favorite, because we do think that eventually, if you structure this right, enough time with enough discipline, it'd be great if you can just wean off of the insurance and let your assets self-insure you to a large degree. That's the ideal. Now, look, I have clients, we buy permanent insurance or help them locate permanent insurance, because sometimes for estate planning or other type of things, you need to go to permanent. But for a lot of people, term does good work. The other thing I was thinking about with life insurance is just the general fact of it is one of those things where it's a hard discussion. I like it that it lets people have these discussions about how are we living our life, what do we need for the future, and have those difficult, make it a broader thing with wills, with disability insurance, because as we know and we've shared, you're much more likely to become disabled while you're in your working career than you are to die prematurely. So make sure you understand that component. I was trying to think if there was any other elements, but I think that covers most of it.
Did you talk about a timeline too? Like not all, even when you think about term policies, they're not all created equal. Sometimes you can do 30-year term policies or 20-year term policies or 10-year term policies. You can actually customize the life insurance coverage you have for the amount of shortfall. So if you know you're someone who's within a decade of financial independence, you may not need a 30-year policy. You may need a 10-year policy. Or if you just want to make sure that you're protected over the long term and you're younger-ish and healthier-ish, you can do a 30-year policy and have yourself covered for a really long time. So it's not like a one size has to fit all.
You can't assume you're always going to be insurable. I will say that's always the disclaimer you put out there. But but if you are a person that has good family history, you're healthy, a good practice, you can ladder term policies. So we see people buy 20-year term policies with each child, and they can, that way they phase out over time. The other thing, now I'm going to screw this part up because it's been years since I went through all my training, but there was some anecdotal, or it was not, it was actually statistical information that like significant others, if you die prematurely, like under 40, there's a good chance that your spouse will remarry. But between 40 to mid 50s, I think it's pretty dry on remarrying. And then I think it was post 60, you see coupling, meaning that people get back together. It just, if you look at the trends of individuals, and that can go into your planning for how you want to handle that. Because if you have a significant other, especially if they don't have, if you don't have kids and other things and they're younger, there's a chance that your need might be shorter on them, marrying again.
Sure.
Great. Christy, if you would like a tumbler for asking a question, you can email winner@moneyguy.com. All right, next up we have an interesting one from Nicole A. She says, I want to optimize to retire early. Is it safer for a long retirement to own a house or more financially smart to rent and invest? I will make $800,000 from selling and I plan to retire by age 50. So It sounds like she already owns a place.
Here's the thing. If you can own and you can control that, like anybody who bought houses pre-20, when was this huge run up?
Pre-2020.
Yeah, it's probably first quarter 2020 or first quarter even 2021. Then you've locked in your cost of home ownership, and now you just have to worry about property taxes. And if you have a low interest on that mortgage, that's the best of all worlds. That's why people who are because you can control your variables as much as possible. But what I worry about is because now if you fast forward to right now and you're trying to figure out, do I own, or meaning go buy something, or do I continue to rent? Well, now we have a different question. It's different because the cost of entry is a little out of wonk right now because interest rates are much higher. Affordability of housing is much higher. And I don't want you to force the ownership side so much so that it jeopardizes your ability to save in an aggressive way to be part of the FIRE/FIND movement that you're trying to, so you have financial independence that much earlier. So it's really a two-prong approach. You have to figure out if you're already in a house, great, you've locked in your variables. But if you're somebody who's aspiring to own, then that definitely is going to be something you're going to balance, whether you're saving and investing or you're trying to make that purchase decision on that house.
Yeah, this is a bit of a hot take of ours, and we catch a little bit of flack on this because some financial minds out there will tell you, oh, if you want to be financially successful, you have to do this. Or if you want to be you have to do this. When it comes to home ownership, we actually don't say that there is a have to on one side or the other. I mean, certainly we fall in the camp of we own our homes and we want to be on the home ownership side. And one of the beautiful things about someone who's going to retire early is when you own your house, even if you have a mortgage on it, you have a fixed cost that you're going to pay for your housing. Now, yeah, it might vary based on taxes and insurance and that sort of thing, but it's relatively locked in. If you rent, you lose some of the control over what your housing costs are going to be in retirement, because there will be rental increases and inflation and that sort of thing that you have to factor in. Now, on the flip side, when you buy and you own a piece of real estate, you're locked into it, especially if you took out a mortgage that says, hey, I'm going to pay on this thing for 30 years until I pay it off. It's a big time commitment. When you rent, you're really only locking yourself down for the term of your lease. Maybe it's 12 months, 18 months, 60 months, so on or so forth. So you have to define, based on retire early, what is your vision of retiring early? It's not uncommon for us that we'll have clients who live in an area and they buy a house, they pay for it, and they say, hey, we're gonna relocate. We've been in the Northeast and we want to go down somewhere warmer down in the Southeast. Okay, great. We're gonna sell our house in the Northeast, but rather than go and buying a home immediately, we're gonna go rent for the first few years of our retirement to kind of figure out where we want to be. Do we want to be in this area, this part of town? What kind of house do we need? What size home do we need? There's nothing wrong with going back and forth, even between renting and ownership, if that's part of your overall financial plan. What I would caution you against, Nicole, is letting someone else tell you, hey, you have to do this. Okay, if you're going to retire, you have to own a home. Or if you're going to retire, you have to sell your home and invest all that equity so the money can be working for you. Either one of those can be true, but neither one of them has to be true. So you need to define and construct a financial plan that is personalized for you and your circumstances and your goals. And whatever that plan is going to be the best solution for you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nicole A., for your question. If you would like a Money Guide tumbler, you can email winner@moneyguide.com.
It took me 6 questions to realize that Bo was wearing my pullover.
What's funny is every time I wear it, every single time I wear it.
Do y'all think Bo looks good in that pullover?
I mean, yeah, we think we all.
I mean, he of course does, but this is what I mean. But this is years ago. We were hired by Toyota to come speak to them, and they were so nice to us. They gave us this great Under Armour pullover.
Under Armour,
it's
beautiful pullover.
And for somehow, Bo and I lived in harmony, both wearing these beautiful pullovers for years, and then I think he stole mine, because mine has disappeared.
But if I already had one.
And every time he wears it, I cuss him.
If I already had one, why would I steal the other one? It
just doesn't make sense. I'm very mindful of where my clothes are at all times, and somehow it disappeared on me.
What's funny is you realize that engagement with Toyota was probably, it had to be close to a decade ago. And
was it really?
It had, yeah, and yet here we are. We still, if you want to know if we love and still wear free swag, absolutely.
I look over and I see Toyota right on his arm.
You know what? I thought I was going to make it all the way through today without you saying it, but
it just looks too good.
I didn't.
Look, that was a plug for them. That's why, hey, give us free swag while we're doing presentations for you, and you might get a free plug.
Maybe they'll give you
Think
your
Corolla,
own
not
pullover.
Land Cruiser.
A Toyota references. Look at that.
I can't help myself.
Holy cow.
Toyota, if you want to sponsor a studio, I know a great one. We don't do a lot of sponsorship around here, but I might make an exception for that one.
The Toyota Money Guy Studio.
And if you have any more of those Under Armour pullovers, let's make it happen.
Brian would love one.
Extra large.
Extra large. Oh, that's so good.
It would solve a lot of strife here.
Honestly, there's no strife on my end. It solves
It's
nothing.
just one
It's because you're the have. I'm the have not.
Well, fair enough.
All right, this next question.
She's like, okay, guys, are we ready to move on?
This next question is from Nick and Nick 99. It says, hello, I'm 25 and I have a full-time job and a business. I max out my Roth IRA and contribute 6% to my 401k. The remainder I invest into my business. Can this be included in my 25% savings rate? What are your thoughts?
We get these. I always love when people say, can I count what I'm paying on my mortgage as my savings, or can I put what I'm putting into my business? Here's a key thing, and I'll let you add to this, Bo, is that when you, of course, your business, people ask me, what is the most valuable money I ever invested? It was my business.
Absolutely.
Because the business has increased my income substantially and has created a lot of benefits. However, I think a lot of times the reason you're saving and investing in the Roth IRAs, the retirement accounts, even your taxable investment accounts, is you're trying to build financial assets that are independent of your human capital and your work. And maybe your business turns into that. because a lot of people, they have those big payoff moments where they sell a business and they get a windfall, but that's not insured. So while you're on the journey of entrepreneurship, you've got to be building assets outside of your human capital, outside of your business venture. So because of that, I think it's a no for me when you're trying to figure out financial independence wise. Now, in the beginning of your business, though, because I've shared this, I'd be a hypocrite, and we have a no hypocrite policy. There was a season of my life after my father passed away, and I was in that 1.5 to 2 years that I was getting my ducks in a row and putting on my 3D glasses, creating my business plan, that pretty much 100% of my money went into planning for the business, and because I wanted to give the business as much cash and capital to be successful, because a lot of business ventures fail, not because the talent's not there, not because the passion's not there, but because they just don't have enough capital to get them through that dry season of the 3 years it takes to get a business going.
So I want to repeat back what I heard to make sure it's right. So,
No,
it was right. No, you cannot count money you're investing in your business as part of your 25% savings. However, sometimes for entrepreneurs, that's necessary. And so I agree with that fully, because I do think for businesses that succeed, one of the best investments you could likely ever make would be pouring into a business that's going to ultimately be successful. What I would challenge you to do is, as quickly as you can, by any means necessary, figure out how you can still get to saving 25%. I mean, I think about these businesses, Brian, that we own. We still invest heavily into them every single year, and yet we're still making sure that we're hitting our savings numbers outside of what we invest in the business. So as soon, Nick, as you can begin doing that, I would still work towards that goal, so that you begin to build up money on the sidelines, which will allow you from having to be in a sink or swim state with your business. Because essentially, if you can do both, build the business and then build your wealth outside of the business, you're going to give yourself maximum opportunity and flexibility later in life. So you cannot count it towards your 25%. So I would argue, outside of that, get to saving 25% as quickly as you can. And hopefully, these investments in the business are going to be the rocket fuel that moves you in that direction to be able to save that 25%.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nick, for your question. Hopefully that gives you some stuff to think about. If you would like a Money Guy tumbler, you can email winner@moneyguy.com. All right, I like the username on this one.
Uh-oh.
It's from the Great Bambino.
Oh, gosh.
That's good.
It says, when would you say that you can switch into stay wealthy behaviors? I'm 27. I have $515,000 net worth, $235,000 in investments, and $90K in cash. I save over 25% into investments, and my goal is to pay off my house. What are your thoughts? So maybe talk about what are those stay wealthy behaviors, and then how do you know if you're ready for those?
Well, let me start at the beginning here, Bambino. I like that username a lot too. You're 27 years old. You have a $500,000 net worth, over $230,000 invested. I'm going to assume a full emergency fund at $90,000. You're saving 25%. By all standards, you are absolutely crushing it, right? Like, I think for most 27-year-olds in this country, when they see that, they'd be like, holy cow, this person is absolutely just rocking it. And that would be a fair statement. So does that mean that you have now made the wealth and now you can focus solely and exclusively on make wealthy tendencies? And another question I would have for you, Brian, in addition to that, is that what that means? Is it like a switch? Like, is one day I make wealth, and then the next day I am maintain wealth? Or is it a gradual process that happens over time as you begin to reach that critical mass and cross over into that new threshold?
It's a road. It's not like you're cooking a turkey and you reach a certain temperature and all of a sudden the thing pops out and says, okay, turkey's done. I think it's more of a roadmap type situation where you're on a journey and you have to take measurements of where you are on that journey from time to time. And what I always worry about for somebody who's in their 20s, by the way, you're crushing it. I don't want to take away from that, but I will tell you, be careful. Sometimes my young financial mutants, you have huge incomes, you're doing really well, and you jump out ahead with like yourself. You have a multiple six-figure portfolio. You have good cash reserves there, and you're like, well, I've crushed it. I'm way ahead of schedule. If I put this on a wealth multiplier right now, I'm going to be rocking this thing forever. The only thing I always get nervous about, first of all, you haven't reached full critical mass, meaning that, like this is not a seven-figure portfolio yet. Not that that's what it has to be, but I'm assuming if you're in a high-income situation, the bigger your income is, and likely the bigger your spending, your monthly expenses are, the bigger the obligation of what you have to save and build is. And so for somebody who can save this much money at such a young age, there's a good chance that your spend rate is going to be high enough that it needs to be seven figures. And I also worry about if you're really young, if you take your foot off of the accelerator of saving and investing at such a young age, where does the money go next? The only thing really left if it's not saving and building is consumption. And what could be a blessing right now for you is that you live on, you have this whole margin thing whooped, meaning that your discipline of life is you're living on less than you make. But if all of a sudden you flip the script and you started consuming more, would you now expand that lifestyle creep to the point that this is not sustainable for the future? A lot of people, I don't know if this analogy is going to hit perfectly, but I have a lot of people who are in private aviation. And they tell me the biggest problem when you get into private aviation is that you'll buy yourself out of the hobby, meaning that you will buy, you start off with like a Cessna, and it's very reasonable on the hourly, burn rate and the fuel cost and how much it costs to maintain it. And then you go up to a Cirrus. And then by the time you get into Moonies and then you keep going up, before you know it, you can't afford your hobby. And I worry about that with lifestyle. I know it's not a perfect thing, but I think that that's the same. It's how you use your resources. So I love what you're doing. Bambino. Yeah. Bambino. Oh.
Okay. No, that's great. You nailed it.
But keep on it a little bit longer because make wealth is so important. And by the way, before you switch into maintain, there are tools out there. This is exactly why we did the Know Your Number course, is because this lets you play with the variables of what your rate of return you're expecting, what's inflation, what are your goals, what's your savings rates. We want to give you something so you could pull all the different levers and kind of know where you are if you're just not at the point that you need a financial advisor yet. Take advantage of that tool. We made it affordable and good because we wanted you to be able to have some resource so that you could start playing around with the numbers to see if you had reached that critical mass point.
And you're already doing some of the maintain wealth stuff. You have a fully funded emergency reserve. I'm assuming that's what that $90,000 is. I don't know if you're still using target retirement index funds or if maybe you've moved on to like more customized portfolio across your investments at $200,000. That may be something that you want to begin to entertain. And then are you taking advantage of the other strategies available to you from a risk mitigation standpoint? Do you have wills in place and estate documents and appropriate insurance? All of those fall into that maintain wealth category, even though you're still very much focused on making wealth. So I think you're at that precipice where you're kind of doing both, but the onus, the emphasis is still on the make wealth. And I would continue on. And then what I get so excited about is you're 27 right now. When you get to 30, 35, 38, 40, it starts to look really, really exciting starting out with these numbers.
Well, I just did some basic math. If 90,000 was their cash reserves, even if you're 3 months, 6 months, that's between $180,000 to $360,000
of expense.
Or you could, if they wanted to base it off of income. Sure. Either way, that's crushing it. That's not scientific, but it was just fun to do a thought exercise.
Bring your calculator on the show one time.
I know. You see, so you gotta be careful.
All right. Thank you so
much. Like my sidearm.
I was sitting there thinking, it's like Billy the Kid, just sitting there.
Do you have a license to carry that, sir? Yes, I do.
Is that the one that Caleb had to get for you off of eBay?
I'm sorry, what?
Is that the one that Caleb had to get for him off of eBay?
Is that the new one? No, that
why do we have to? So this thing we had to buy it off of eBay. I'm that old to make me comfortable.
You think they still make that dinosaur these days?
Yeah, they still make it. This is time value of money is timeless.
I could not find a new one.
Do they make a new version of it though?
Mine, the calculator that I've been using for the last 20 years.
No, yours isn't Hewlett. Yours is Texas Instrument.
Exactly. Once TI burst on the scene, they kind of did away with HP.
Have you seen how flimsy your buttons are? I mean, I couldn't use your calculator for just how the buttons feel. These are firm. See how they're even contoured? Yours are like all floppy. When you move as fast as my thumbs move, that would never work. That TI can't do what my HP does.
It's probably why there's so many of them readily available to be bought right now.
Like I said, this is like
marketplace.
sidearm discussion here. You see this? We all have, every cowboy's got to have their preferred weapon. Mine is an HP. But you should have seen me back in the day. We should, is it down in the basement? My old 10 key.
Oh, yeah, it's somewhere. It used to be on set. It's somewhere.
Oh, there's another one?
No, an actual 10 key. Like
My public accounting days. I used to have a 10 key that, I don't know how that came. Did I steal that from my first employer? That's kind of cruel. Think about that. Why do I have a 10 key? I didn't buy it. How do I have a 10 key?
Somebody packed up the box and walked out with it.
It's like a military. That's like if you're in the army and all of a sudden you take home with a bazooka. I'm sure that's frowned upon.
It's pretty much the exact same thing, I think.
A 10 key's a powerful instrument. Back in the day, I could foot a ledger like something you've never seen. I don't know how we got into so many public accounting discussions
The
today.
10 key is the bazooka of the financial world. I hope y'all put that together. That's fantastic.
Love it. All right. Thank you, The Great Man Beanbo, for your question. If you would like a Money Guy tumbler,
Much better.
you can email winner@moneyguy.com. You know, I only know that because of the Sandlot movies.
Of course, yeah. Do you know like the original, like where the Great Bambino came from? Like, do you know?
Babe Ruth?
That's Babe Ruth.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got you, Bo.
And popularized by the Sandlot for, this generation.
Is that even old enough to need some cultural explanation?
So what's so funny is like I'm so excited to show my kids the Sandlot, but they're too young. Like I just feel like not quite yet. But that's gonna be a fun it's gonna be fun when my kids reach the age that I get to watch all the movies that not all the movies that formed my youth, but a lot of the movies that like formed my youth. I'm so excited to get to share that with them. They're just not quite ready for Sandlot
I'm gonna
yet.
go. I'll fast forward. I've got older children.
Huh?
They're gonna disappoint you.
Don't tell
I remember
Don't tell me that.
Jennifer and I showed Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and
It had to be a hit, right?
I mean, I think she liked it, and then we last week we did Gladiator, the original one.
Yeah.
I think
Did
she
love
liked it. I don't know if it's just you never get the reaction like the first Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Because that one, if you're not my age, so don't pretend you are. But if you're my age, the first time you saw those dinosaurs, you're like, holy cow.
So
Movies
good.
have changed and it's so incredible. And then you show it to your younger children and they're like, because they're so inundated with,
They don't think it's impressive anymore.
it just doesn't seem that big of a deal. They're like, you should have grown up with claymation.
Gosh, it's gonna be so
And
fun.
doing stop motion
I didn't even
action.
think about showing my kids Jurassic Park. That's gonna be a fun one too. They'd be super scared of it right now, but we'll get there.
You know what is impressive?
Oh, my
goodness
gosh! Well,
gracious.
that's a way to end the show.
Is that really how we're going to go?
Well, it's because
out?
all the people that are controlling the boards right now are all Ohio State fans. That is not sponsored by the Money Guy.
I don't
Show.
know how. I'm going to blame Reby because she's not even here. But Reby's classifies herself as a Buckeye. All these Cincinnati or Ohio, all these Ohio people that we let them see. This is
lot
the
of
problem. You
Ohio
move
people
up.
on the
We're from
team.
Georgia. You move up a little bit closer to Ohio, and all these Ohioans.
It's
Is
because
that what Ohioans?
the Ohioans, this weather doesn't bother them.
They come a little south down to Tennessee, and this is what you get on your content stuff. All right,
Wow.
we'll do better.
What a downer.
Took
to
some
end on.
celebrities there on all of our creative content paid for with UGA money. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you to everybody who tuned in with us today. If you would like to get any of the resources that we talked about, you can find them at moneyguy.com/resources. And don't forget that we've got a new show premiering on Monday, February 3rd. It's called Making a Millionaire. So that
Did you
trailer,
just do finger guns?
I did do
you
some
did do
finger guns.
guns.
It's pretty good.
If you would like to check out the trailer for that, it's on our YouTube channel, or you can go to moneyguy.com/makingamillionaire to find out more info on that. And of course, as always, we will be back next Tuesday to answer all of your financial questions.
I feel like, in that Braveheart, that scene where Mel Gibson's character is like, hold. He's telling him not to release just yet. That's why I am with Bo. every day. Because I'm like, even in our content meeting before, I was like, yes, I'm excited. The show's releasing, very soon, February 3rd.
February 3rd.
But let's calm down. It's gonna be very good. But hold. So
I'm so excited.
I hope you guys will love it as much as we've loved creating it, and because there's been a lot that's gone into it, so it's gonna be fun. But I'm super excited. I'll just say that.
I love it.
Truthfully, I'm holding because if I let myself go, so it's gonna be good.
Thank you for the restraint. I think that's great.
That was not a complete sentence. Guys, we'll close out with, hey, I'm a mess today. Respect the foo. Maybe not enough MCT oil in the coffee. But I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen, Money Guy Team, out. Not my best work on the closing.